And I can jump in. Sorry. First, I want to remind you also this meeting is being recorded today. And so by participating, you are giving permission to be recorded. And if you miss a call or want to share the information that's shared today with anyone else, feel free to find it on our website. These meetings are posted there afterwards, and we encourage you to go back and review any information or share it with someone that you think may find it interesting. And our first item today is our stakeholder introduction. And so I'm going to share my screen and introduce you to one of our partners today. If you think you know who this is, as I am going through the slides, feel free to, feel free to put a guess in chat, and we'll see if your guess is correct. And so the purpose of this really is to get to know the names and faces on the call. I know some of you know each other, and there's new people in every meeting probably, and so we want to help them get to know each other, and then hopefully build connections that can lead to collaboration and more partnerships and working together. So this stakeholder, when asked what they like to do to relax or unwind, they said they love doing things with their wife and 9-year-old son. This weekend, they're going to a rodeo. I fly, sometimes crash unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones. Enjoy listening to books, especially historical fiction, Napoleonic era, naval, sailing, World War II naval, and Star Trek. So if you have any guesses, you can write it there. Something interesting about them is that they lived for almost 2 years in Qatar, working for the U.S. Army. While there, my brother visited, and we trained with a dragon boat team. I'm not sure what a dragon boat team is, but we can find out in a minute. And what do you like best about your job? They said they love everything that they have done so far. NASEMSO is an amazing group of people. I'm so happy to have found this tribe. So that may give you a clue as well. This is the newest member of the NASEMSO TAC, and his name is John Britt. So if you have not met John on a call or a meeting yet, hopefully you will soon. And we are so excited to have him joining us. And he has some pictures here of his wife and his son. And if you're on a call with him, you may also meet his poodle, is often involved in the calls as well. So thanks for sharing that, John. And John, if you want to turn your camera, can you tell us what a dragon boat is? Dragon boat training? I was not familiar with that term.
It is I was with the Filipino team in Qatar, and they're like narrow canoes that are really long and paddled kind of like Viking ships. But really small, but they're really fast and a lot of fun. And they're just doing their pre-boat workout to get warmed up. I was so tired. I didn't think I was going to be able to paddle anything, but it was a lot of fun.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And then I just wanted to give an update as well on our states. I know Utah turned green this month. Congratulations to Utah. And Nevada, I believe, has reached their threshold, and we are just waiting to have our IT team turn them green in the next few days. So be looking for that announcement soon. Congratulations to Kevin and his team in Nevada. And then I know there's several other states that are very close as well. So thanks for everyone working there, and feel free to reach out if you're in that process and have questions. We are happy to help. And the next topic is mine as well. And so I can jump into that, and Jen is going to help me here. Are you guys still seeing my screen? Are you seeing the NASEMSO homepage currently?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So we wanted to just give a quick update and reminder today and share a little information about the state data set and what it is used for, both by states and by vendors, and give some kind of tips and reminders along the way as well. So on the NASEMSO homepage, if you scroll down, the best way to find your state data set is to find your state. And I'm going to select Alabama today because they always do a great job of keeping their state data set current. And we also really love the detail they put into their their change log, their notes here as well. And I know we've mentioned this on another call recently, but vendors have requested, if you don't currently do this, if you wouldn't mind putting an effective date. So if you want it effective immediately, or if there's a date you've chosen in the future that you want it to be effective, if you could list that there. And then just a reminder too, your state data set can be downloaded at this link just below the red button that says state data set, or if you click on the red button, it'll bring you there. And it's really important essentially that you as a state data manager are keeping this current and up to date, because this is where vendors in your state will come to get information if you have added facilities or agencies or removed some, to know what elements you want collected in your state, and then they will use that as they build out their software for the users in your state. So it's important as you have changes that you update this. Currently, it does need to be updated. If you're submitting in 3.4, you need to use the state data set builder to update it, save it, and email it to us. In version 3.5, once you transition to that, updating your state data set will be much easier, is the good news. You'll be able to make those changes to agencies and facilities and anything in your state data set directly in your software. And when you save it, it will automatically be sent to us and posted on your state page. And so you will no longer need to email your state data set to us once you're in version 3.5. Is there anything you'd add to that, Jen?
We did last year on NASEMSO 101 on the state pages, put in some best practices guide for change logs and resources on the NASEMSO 101 page.
Yes, I was going to go there next. And so under using EMS data, if you go to NASEMSO 101, and if you scroll down or click on the state-specific tools, and then it's listed as best practices for state resources right here. And I can put the link in chat in just a moment, but this is a great document to read through if you never have, and it just gives lots of tips and tricks and more details about updating your state data set as well as your schematron. And so I encourage you to look over that if you have not previously. And then the second place I was going to point you to as well, let me go back here, is under technical resources. And if you go down to the bottom left column under guides and usage, there's another guide here under dataset guides. There's some technical resources that may be good for you to look through. They may be written more for software developers, but it may be interesting for you to know some of that information. But this first one is something we created not too long ago, and I just wanted to share that briefly. And it's a good reminder of the three data sets and the differences between them and the purposes of them. And so there's the state data set, which includes, as we said, the agencies, the facilities, the information about what's collected. There's the DEM data set that gives demographic information about your agencies. And then the EMS data set, which is the information collected in the field during that patient encounter by the clinician. And so on the bottom of this sheet, I'll put a link in chat to this in just a moment too, but you can click on the bottom of each of these graphics and it'll bring you to a more technical guide about that specific data set. But this is a good reminder of those three data sets and what their purposes are and their uses. And then just a reminder too, I know often the DEM data set, if that is sent at the same time as the EMS file for a new agency, those files will fail if we haven't received the DEM data set 24 to 48 hours prior to the first EMS record. So as you have new agencies come on, if you can make sure the demographic file is sent first and then followed by the EMS files, that'll make sure none of those records are failing. Jen, anything else from a vendor perspective that we should think about, or anything I forgot?
I put the links in, so took care of that for you. And I would like to say, especially for the state data managers, the state data set guide really informs your vendors on your expectations, what you're looking for, along with your schematron. And so it's super important to keep those up to date. I know sometimes updates can be made in the direct entry, right, for your direct entry users, but those updates need to be made for your third-party vendors as well, so they can meet the same expectations that you have. So keeping that state data set up to date along with your schematron is super, super important. Dipti has her hand up. Is this a question for the state data sets? Hopefully you can, I think you should be able to unmute, Dipti.
Hi, Jennifer. Yes, it is. And a couple of clarification. I think this is more for the vendors to help me understand. When we update the state data set, what is the good practice? How often should we update our state data set? Because I frequently do update facility list and new EMS agencies that do come on board. But I want to understand the load from the vendor side on how often should we publish the updated state data set?
Great question. Do any vendors want to answer that?
Someone did a thumbs up, but I can't see who it was that did a thumbs up. So raise your hand and we can let you unmute. So a good practice, Dipti, I will go ahead and just speak to it a little bit, is to update it when there is new facilities, when there are new agencies that you're expecting to report, so those vendors can bring it down and publish from that state data set. Mm-hmm. And at least, I would think at a minimum, you'd want to look at it quarterly. I think you do a good job keeping it up to date. But at a minimum, I think states would want to look at it quarterly, make sure that it's what you're not every time you make a change within your state that would affect the state data set. So if you add protocols, remove protocols, add medications or remove procedures or anything like that, that would affect the expectation that you have for your EMS provider agencies, you want to make sure you update that state data set. That's what lets them know that you made the update. And then David Saylor from Beyond Lucid said quarterly at a bare minimum is what they would like to see. In Florida, they do it about once a month, and which is great. And let's see, we've got Samantha Helge from ESO. You should be able to unmute, Sam.
There. So the one thing I would say about updating state data set as a burden on the vendors, facility codes, protocol changes, all of that, that's very easy for us. Mm-hmm. We don't need a lot of heads up. But if you are adding a custom element to the state data set, that is something that we do need a lot of, upfront time to make sure we can handle and get set up for you. So that would be one that I would say, that would not be one I'd want to see quarterly updated, or monthly updated. But as long as we get a good warning on that, so we can get it scheduled in, that would be the best.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah. Now, when you update the state data set for the agency, do agencies get notified? Or how does that work from the agency side?
For ESO, the agencies do not get notified directly from us when there's a state data set update. We just make those changes on our end. Okay. And then they're available.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is because I do get requests from agencies who do use a vendor software, specifying adding a specific facility that they're going to be using. So that way I would know that once the state data set is published from my end, I would at least give them the heads up that that new facility that was just added for them, it should be available anytime soon. So that's the reason why I was asking.
And then we also have Tony, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
For image trend, I know once you submit your updates to your data set and we get it, then we publish it, and there's an automatic update within our product that will go out to anybody that is within your state using Elite, that will go ahead and it'll supply them with a message to let them know to update the data set from what you put on there. And we publish that within our software.
Okay. And I apologize for Georgia. We just previously updated our state data set, I believe last week. But I was not good at making the notes on what was updated, so I will do better. But that does include a lot of facility changes in them. Not codes changes, but just name changes and address changes. So just letting all the vendors know that. But I will do better next time. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
Tiffany.
Dipti.
And Caitlin from Angel Track also mentioned about adding additional choices to existing pick lists. So that's almost like a custom element, at least within the technical side of things. Adding an additional choice is the same thing. We do have a best practices guide for those custom element additions where whenever possible, we ask that you give the vendors 90 days if they have to create new custom elements. And it's just, I know sometimes there are instances where, that may not be able to happen, but it is a good, because think of all the time you put into developing that custom element and getting it to work before you put it out for them. They have to do the same thing on their side and make sure that it makes sense and it flows and it works for the EMS provider that's having to start using the new custom element or understand what it is or what's been added. So that is a part of the state data set. Thanks, Sam, for bringing it up. We should have definitely pointed that out. And if there's any other questions or anything like that in regards to the state data set utilization or recommendations that anyone has, Anne from Arizona, you should be able to unmute.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Dipti, I'm sure other states have other processes. I'm not saying mine is the best. I remember doing that best practices guide. I think that's a good thing to follow. I don't know if I've written down exactly my process, but I do send out an email once I know that it's been the updated schematron or whatever data set, everything's been approved and uploaded on the NEMSIS side, and that my vendor has it applied on my side. Then I email all of the agencies and the vendors in one big email, blind copied, obviously, because that would be a nightmare. And then just tell them, if you're this kind of agency and you do your own schematron updates, it's on this is where it is on the GitHub, on the NEMSIS site. If you're a vendor and you do your agencies, go look at the GitHub. If you're an image trend agency, go look in the library. And then I tell them, I attach a link to our changelog, a link to the updated facilities list. And then if there's changes to validation rules or schematron rules, business rules, then I attach that to a link, because we post that on our public website, but you could just attach the documents. And then I'll generally say this is effective immediately, because with facilities, there's no reason why not. And if there's something where there's a delay, with something that's going to be kind of an adjustment, that could be a negative effect, then usually, I'll give them a date by which that rule will go into effect. But that's just what I do. And there's probably a lot of other ways to do it.
Thanks, Anne. I think it's always helpful to hear how other people do things. So thank you. Doug from Kentucky did ask if the vendors use a state's newest facility list wholly and just overwrite the old list, or if they make each individual changes. And the reason he's asking is because he's currently making a ton of small corrections, probably to address, names, punctuation, things like that are within the names. And so it's time consuming for him to document every tiny change that he's making. So he's just wondering if most vendors just overwrite the facility list, or if they actually go through and make those changes one by one. Is there any vendor that would like to speak to that that's on the call? Dave Saylor, you should be able to unmute.
Okay. Yeah, so for the actual fine-grained nitty-gritty changes, the Git repository provides those to us. So we don't need it in that level of detail, just kind of the high-level things. We've added, corrected, some number of facilities and whatnot, and we can go and pull the actual differences on our own. And I think it depends on the vendor, but we use the files directly, so it's basically like overwriting, but we don't have that we don't pull it apart initially. It's just used as the state data set, and they're able to pull it in from that into their configuration for the agency.
And that also brings up a question I got asked a couple months ago about when there's an Excel facility list or some other type of resource beyond the state data set. When those Excel lists are updated, that does not affect your state data set. You also have to make those changes in your state data set. So an Excel list is a great additional resource, especially for EMS provider agencies that aren't maybe looking at their software necessarily, but want to pull down the spreadsheet. So if you do update in that spreadsheet, make sure it matches what's in your state data set. That keeps everybody in line and on the same page with that. And pretty much what I'm seeing, Doug, in the notes is people saying the same thing. Like if you're simply just add a note that there was facility list adjustments and they can look for the specifics. All right, I am not seeing any other questions or notes or comments, so I will pass it back to you, Lauri.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jen, and thanks everyone for that conversation. That's exactly the purpose of this call, is to have those conversations. So thanks for participating. And next up, we have our newest member of the team, John Britt, is going to share an update to our grant guidance resource document that we created, I think, a little over a year ago initially, and then we have updated it with some new grant information we heard about. So John, do you want to jump on and share that?
Sure. So I sent this out to the Google group, but if you didn't get it, I'll give you a quick blurb of the new one we added. It's a grant from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the local cybersecurity grant program. It's aimed at bolstering cybersecurity capabilities of state and local governments. They're giving out about $375 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for cybersecurity risks and threats to government information systems. And they'll pay for anything from implementing cyber governance, assessing and enhancing capabilities, mitigating issues, and even building a cybersecurity workforce. People can apply for it. All 56 states as a state and territories and the tribal governments and local entities can also benefit through pass-through awards. 80% of the money actually is supposed to go to local governments. So even though it's for the state, it's aimed at local governments. It's managed by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and FEMA. And to get more information, I'll send you out an email in link here. And this is a link to the actual grant form stuff we have. And I'm going to share my screen for just a second. And I'll show you where to find this going forward, if you ever want to look at it again. So just go to the using EMS data, NEMSIS 101, scroll down the state specific tools, and then right there, updated general grant application information. And it'll open up a PDF, and we just update this PDF every time we get more information. So everything I just told you is in the PDF here, as well as an email address. But I'm going to put the email address in the chat as well, just in case you want to get to email for more information. The one most important thing to know is that you have to have your application in by December 31st. So time is of the essence.
Perfect. Thanks, John. And just a reminder too, as you guys are applying for grants, feel free to reach out if we can help you with that or assist in any way. And if you are applying for grants, especially if you've been successful, we love to hear about that so that we can help guide other states as they're applying and help them figure out what's working other places or give them ideas of what they may be able to apply for. So reach out if you are in that process. And next on our agenda today is Chris Hoffman, and he's going to share our annual report that came out recently from 2022. I'll pass it over to you, Chris.
Well, thank you very much, Lauri. So, ladies and gentlemen, so excited about this one. This is a significant part of my time during the year, is putting out the gathering together and putting together the annual report. And I think we have another great one here. Big shout out to our stats team, Skylar in particular, who runs all these numbers up for me. Really appreciate it. So the 2022 National EMS Data Report is live. It is on our website, and I'll show you at the end of this part to where you can get it from. The National Report is a gathering of all of the highlights of a lot of the great data that you're all working so hard to gather. We have a set of explanations in here. It has an overview, sections on typical patient, pediatric patient. If you've seen previous year's annual reports, it has a lot of similar information. We have 4 of these now, so you can actually go back, take all 4 of these and make comparisons of the data and how it's changed over the last few years. The not going to go through this line by line. You can check these out. It has the demographic information, medications given. Later on in the report, we also have another section on COVID related data. So it does have the 2019 and as a baseline, and 2020, 2021, and 2022. Fascinating information in here. You have some of the contact information and citing information here at the end. Very excited about this. Fun. And like I said, this is like one of the symbol crashes of the year for me. So I'm excited for people to actually get a hold of this and use it to actually, now that I've got you jazzed about it, where do you find this amazing report? You go to the NASEMSO website, and under using EMS data, we have a section that is called Articles and Publications. Under Articles and Publications, very first thing here you'll see is the annual public data reports for 2022 back to 2019. And also on this page, you will find by order of year of release, findings that use NASEMSO data, papers and other reports that use NASEMSO data. And so this is another great resource if you are trying to show the how NASEMSO data is being used by showing the annual report and the different types of reports and studies that are done with the data. I will go ahead and throw a link into the chat here. Oh, I sent it to one person. So Lee, you have it. And now I'm going to go ahead and send the link to everyone. You got a special preview edition there for 3 seconds. Any questions, comments, anything like that about the public report? If one comes up while you're looking at it, please feel free to message me and let me know things you like, things you'd like added. Any sort of feedback, I am always welcome to that for this report and for anything for that matter that I take care of. Awesome. I'll hand it back over to you, Lauri.
Sounds great. And thank you, Chris, for all your hard work on that report. It really does look excellent, and we're excited for that.
Awesome.
And as a state data manager, it may be something you want to share with agencies. I imagine they would find some of that national data interesting to look at. So we'd encourage you to share that as you wish. And next on our agenda today is Josh Legler. He's going to talk about the 2023 EMS Data Summit.
Okay, thanks, Lauri. Good morning, everyone. Let me get my screen share on. So the EMS Data Summit 2.0 in conjunction with the ONC annual meeting is coming up in December, December 15th. And there is now a banner on the NEMSIS homepage announcing that summit. So it's the first one on the banner when you come to the NEMSIS website. If I click through to that, it's got all the information about the summit and then a flyer and a link to register for the summit. So the ONC annual meeting will be December 14th and 15th in Washington, D.C. The EMS Data Summit will be on the afternoon of December 15th. It will be available for those who are attending in person in Washington, D.C. and also online as well. So if you're not able to make the travel, that's fine. You can still register for this data summit and attend remotely. The purpose of the data summit is to talk all about interoperability between EMS and the rest of healthcare. We'll identify, what's working so far, and also what the value is of having interoperability with the rest of healthcare, and then identifying those opportunities for the next steps that we need to take. And this is really an opportunity, I think, to have the ear of the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, to be at that federal policy level and say, what are the things that would move interoperability forward, from that perspective. So we've done a lot in the EMS Interoperability Task Force at the technical level, identifying the standards to use and things like that. But we recognize that the technical is not the only thing that has to be in place. There has to be policy and incentives and funding and things like that. And so the Data Summit is an opportunity to look at some of those higher level things. So that is coming up on December 15th, and registration is free of charge. So if you want to attend in person or remotely, either way is fine. And I would encourage you to register if you are interested in EMS interoperability and where it is going, where it needs to go next. So I'll post a link in the chat for the registration as soon as I finish up here. Any questions for me or comments? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Josh. And that is great to know. It is free to register and that a virtual option is available. So if you or anyone in your state who would be interested in this, I'd encourage you to pass along that information. And see, we've got a few new messages here. Let me just chat. Yep, I think we're good. All right, next on our agenda is Jen Correa, and she's going to talk some more about version 3.5.1 changes.
I am going to talk more about it. So I am putting in the link again for everyone. That is to the wiki page where you can keep track of all of these items and where they're located. Any of them that have been determined not to be moving forward are in the process of being moved. I think I have two more that look like they're unresolved, but they're being moved into the rejected pile. So please keep in mind, actually, I will show you. This one is what the page will look like. And yep, these are the two that I have. So these two will move over into the resolved. Anything that says rejected, if that was your suggestion, and during the polls and the surveys and the annual meeting discussion and the V3 implementation call discussions and the data manager discussions. So all those discussions, everything, those ended up in the rejected, but you really want it to come up into the next version change. Talk with your counterparts, talk with the EMS stakeholders. If there's another way to ask for it, maybe there's another way to do it that would be, get through the whole process of all the EMS stakeholder approvals. So just because it's in that column does not mean that it's the end forever. It's just the end for V351. And if it's something that, wait, I asked for that like 4 years ago, we are getting into a more iterative process after we finish V351. So just don't be afraid to ask again. I don't want to discourage anyone.
Hey, Jen.
Yes, Clay.
I'm just letting you know we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, well, that would help if you could see it. And can you see it now?
Yes. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Okay. So I just stopped and I told someone earlier this morning that it never fails that I mess up Zoom. So this is the homepage. I put the link into it. This is what you would see. This is what it would look like to you. Resolved are the ones that I was just speaking about. They say rejected. That's just a classification within the JIRA system. And then there's notes on them. Anything, these in progress too will be moved over into resolved. They actually have been, they just haven't been finished being moved. Currently under review, those were approved either in the first poll surveys that you did or at the annual meeting or during follow-on discussions processes where those were discussed. The ones here in the submitted requests that are still being looked at, those are the ones that we have still been talking about. And there are 20 of them technically, because one of them has 2 different tickets with it here and there. So these are the ones that we're still talking about. We are hoping to get through all of the discussions, get all of the input, all of the knowledge out there and get this finished up before Thanksgiving. So we know all the things that are moving forward for version 351. And so you all know what's moving forward for version 351. One of the items that we discussed last time, and we said we would bring you back can you see, you can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, my green box disappeared, so I wasn't sure if I was still sharing. So these are the 3 scenarios for a patient that absconds, right? A patient can elope from the scene, run away from the scene, or can elope during the transport. We have heard of that happening, where you pull up to a stoplight and they, start unbuckling themselves and jump out, and short of kidnapping them, you really don't know what you're going to do. And then there's also the ones where you arrive at the destination, they jump out and take off before you can transfer patient care over to the facility. So those are the 3 scenarios where a patient could elope. And we chose, this is one of the suggestions that came out of the discussions, was using the term patient elopement. And that is in line with some of our other partners' terminology that's used. So we went with that. Patient elopes at scene, patient elopes during transport, patient elopes. Here is how it would look within the e-disposition structure. Patient contact was made, right? For a patient to elope, you had to have made contact. Patient care and evaluation. Did you provide care in this scenarios? I just said you provided care. Obviously, if you evaluated and they refused the care or there was no care required, this could have a different answer to it. For e-disposition 29, you initiated and continued primary care in these scenarios. Obviously, if you assumed primary care from another crew, that's what you would use, or whatever was appropriate for the care that the crew gave during the call. E-disposition 30, if they eloped at the scene, there was no transport done. Obviously, if your state considers elopement a refusal, a patient refused transport could be used, or if your state designates that it would be not applicable. But for the purposes of NEMSIS, we used no transport. If the transport began in your unit and you were the only crew, transport by this EMS unit, this crew only. In e-disposition 31, reason for refusal, that is where this was added, and you could mark that the patient eloped. So that seemed to be able to fit the request, answer all of the questions that were brought up last time. There was some concern about billing. There was some concern about, what if my state does this different or does that different? This allows everyone to track elopements without affecting how they're filling out the other disposition categories. So is there any questions, concerns, thought? Doug, I see your hand up. You should be able to unmute.
Thanks, Jen. Are we going to adjust national rules? So if they eloped and I say transport, I may not have a destination. I may not have a transfer. So does this result in a bunch of national rules being adjusted as well? And then the second concern, say next to our billing team, they have concerns about transport because these items would be sent to a billing company. And unless they're specifically looking at that cancellation, they may bill for this transport if we still allow a destination and times, et cetera. There's just some concerns there that this may get past current layers.
Yeah, as far as the national schematrons go, we have started that discussion about which rules would need to be adjusted and what would need to be adjusted on the national level. Now, on the national level, they're all warnings, right? So in your states, some states have made some of those warnings into errors and some have made them more strict so that, you know, they can't transmit that record. So the states would also need to look at how they have adjusted their rules around those. But yeah, the discussion has started that we need to look at the national schematron. For billing purposes, I don't know that there has been discussion around that. I don't have another billing stakeholders meeting until next year. So maybe I can send out an email to them and kind of get their thoughts and ideas on it as well.
Yeah, I would suggest that. I think it's important that we address all layers. And I think the billing component is a key layer into this so that an agency doesn't get put in a sticky position where based upon dispositions, they accidentally bill a run that they shouldn't have.
Thanks, Doug. So I was looking at the messages. So, and yes, if you look at this column, anything that's currently under review, those are actually items that have been accepted and are moving to the next phase of version 3.5.1 development. So that's this line here. And as we discuss these items, they will move into the currently under review. So resolved, you're going to see these start to move there as development progresses, and I will let you know which term means that it was actually developed. And I hope I answered those questions, and if not, let me know. Are there any more thoughts or anything in addition to Doug's on the going back to the 3 scenarios for any eloping? And I should adjust my terminology in the title as well for the patient elopement. Any concerns in addition to the billing? All right, and we've actually agreed on terminology, which is fantastic. All right, so these are the items that are left. One of those was the ones we just discussed, and we will talk about that. The other items that I wanted to talk about on this call is the items around the gender, the addition of sex at birth, gender identity. There was a few different tickets that were submitted for that. We've had quite a bit of discussion. We've gotten feedback, the polls and the surveys. And after some discussions with other national agencies and what they're putting out now in regards to gender, they're actually just now under the study of trying to bring in and make adjustments. So rather than adjusting the NASEMSO standard now and then having to turn around and adjust the NASEMSO standard again or have it not meet those federal guidelines, we think the best approach is to turn this back to the NASEMSO DMC group that has been working on the development of national custom elements, that all of the states can use the same custom element and get the data in the same way, but that allows you the flexibility you need while we still adhere to those guidelines. Are there any thoughts, comments? Clay, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that was a good discussion. We've been anxiously awaiting for HHS and others to come up with recommendations, and they're working on it now with some preliminary pilot surveys that are going out. But I think we're probably still a year, if not two, away from having any decision at a federal level. So rather than making a change and trying to implement it over the next couple of years, and then having a standard come out that's required by federal entities at about the exact same time that we have it up and working, let's develop those national custom elements, and we will pass along to that group the survey findings that we've kind of been tracking at the federal level, so that they can align most closely with what's looking like will happen at the federal level, so that the national custom elements will come as close as we possibly can to what the nation is thinking about, what the feds are thinking about using, so we're sure that it's not wildly different. I think that's the best we can do.
And I didn't see any hands go up, so I'm going to go ahead and move to the next one, which is the e-history 17. This is the alcohol substance abuse element. And we had approved adding a value to note when I don't know what I was spelling right here, guys. I do a lot of work at late, so I apologize. So adding a value to when a bystander or family report drug and or alcohol use, that was approved, but the wording still needed to have some work. And from what I can tell from all of the polls and the surveys, it looks like adding to bystander family report drug use and bystander family report alcohol use, keeping them separate, which is the way that it is in the other elements, or within the element with the other selections. Are there any thoughts or concerns about, sorry, that's wrong color, about that one?
Can you show the element, Jen, just for those
I
just for folks
can. Hang on 1 second. And
yeah, just for new folks who may not be familiar with what e-history 17 looks like.
I type really well when no one is watching. I'm just gonna say, there we go. And I will, hopefully this is big enough for everyone to see. So these are the current values. And we would be adding patient bystander reports alcohol use, family bystander reports alcohol use, family bystander reports drug use. All right, so if I don't see any hands up, I'm going to assume you agree with everything that I am saying, which I just like to thank you for that. So those two would be moved over appropriately into their new sections on the NEMPUB board. Link was put into the chat. All right. The other one that we talked about last time, and there was a question on whether it aligned with CARES and whether it could be removed without impact to CARES, was EARREST 09. And it is not part of the alignment with CARES. There is nothing about hands-only CPR within the CARES data dictionary or documentation. This is, please keep in mind, this is the documentation of the type or technique of CPR used by EMS. This is not for bystander CPR. That has a whole different area. And the request is to remove this one because it seems duplicative of compressions manual and is sort of a teaching brand kind of thing. From the polls and the surveys, they did tend to go toward the removal. They in the 60 to 65% range, which is why we brought them back just to make sure there was nothing else. Are there any concerns about moving forward this and removing compressions hands only CPR? Fantastic. Okay, and then the last one that we have talked about somewhat and want to get the final move forward or stop is about adding vendor information into the demographics file. The one thing that I do want to point out is what we're talking about is the same information as we get in the ePCR file for eRecord 02, 03, and 04, which is just the software creator, the software name, and the software version that created that demographic file. So those are the three things that we were talking about adding to the demographic, and that is to help the states know when those were generated by who. Sometimes there are vendor changes, those kinds of things. Being able to look at that would be helpful. Is there, and keep in mind, these would be added as optional or recommended elements. It would not be added as any type of requirement for 351. Are there any concerns with moving forward with adding these to the demographic data set? I see no hands and I see no chat. I see a thumbs up. All right, so we are going to go ahead and move forward. So that is 4 right there that were resolved. You will not have to hear about those again until we talk about the 2 that are moving forward for 351. It's 8:51. I would like to actually give you an update about the Richmond agitation sedation scale. That one, you're going to see this one go to yellow. Right now, we're actually trying to figure out if this is OEMS is looking at it, if this is something that's practiced in EMS and an accepted practice in EMS. So it's being looked at, and that would have an impact on the addition and whether or not it moves forward. And thank you all for your time today. You will get in 2 weeks. Hopefully we will get through the rest of these. Are there any questions, thoughts, concerns? If you do have any and if you look at the NEMPUB page and you have comments that you would like to make, but you don't feel comfortable making them on the call or putting them into chat, please feel free to go ahead and send an email or open up a help desk ticket, however you're comfortable, and give us your opinion. We want to hear from the stakeholders. Remember, these change requests have come from you and the stakeholders, and so it makes sense to get information and thoughts from you as we move forward on the changes. All right, Lauri, you can go ahead and I will stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for all your work in collecting all those changes and tracking. You're just doing a great job. I know that's been a long process. So thank you. And we're continually talking about how we can do this better in the future. I think there likely will be more frequent conversations like this over the next few years, rather than waiting until right before the changes need to be decided. I think as suggestions come in, we plan to bring them up and discuss them throughout the year. So if you would like to be part of those conversations, please continue to be on these calls. And if you have ideas for changes, as Jen said, feel free to submit a help desk ticket and we can get those started for you. Next on the agenda, we want to share again 2 documents we've created recently. We hope will help both states and vendors as you're transitioning to version 3.5. And these were emailed out about a week and a half ago. And then we've made a commitment to email them out every other week, every other Friday. So this Friday, you will get the updates again, but we wanted to share them. And are you seeing my Excel sheet here? Looks like.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. And this is a list of states that have not yet turned green, so are not yet submitting 3.5 data to the national level. And then from what we know of what their plans are or what they've communicated to us, any known progress as we as we hear about that, we update this sheet, and then we will send it out to vendors, as I mentioned, every other week. And then we also have a new report that we are running that shows for states that are submitting, so that you know the percentage of your records that are being submitted in 3.4 and the percentage that are being submitted in 3.5, as well as the agency count, the number of agencies submitting in 3.4 and 3.5. So hopefully once you turn green, then you can begin tracking the percentage of your records and of your agencies that have transitioned. Any questions on those documents? Be looking for those to come in an email this Friday. All right, next on our agenda is our partner, Randall Eimerman, who is a liaison between NMSIS and NASEMSO. And we asked him to join us today and to give us some updates on some projects that he's working on. And in case any of these topics interest you, we encourage you to reach out to him if you're interested in being part of the development of these ideas.
Yes, thank you, Lauri. And I'll actually make sure to add my email to the chat function after the short presentation here. So just a couple of updates on some of the processes or some of the work that's being done between NASEMSO, NMSIS, and some of the partners here. A lot of talk has been discussed today about the state data sets or the facility list. I have been working with Jen from NMSIS on a concept to help identify the proper codes, the names, the addresses of those facilities. I'm well aware that those change often. The states are running across the state lines to actually destinations for other states. And sometimes as I look back and forth, I notice that the names are different, but the addresses may be the same. So we're going to be bringing this back to the Data Managers Council and just going to looking for some best practices and see if we can help identify the best way to make sure that our facility lists are always current, up to date, to really help out our local agencies and our vendors. Secondly, there's talk about the national provider number, the national provider ID number. A lot of talks with this about adding an element. This would include no additional documentation. A lot of talks with the NREMT on how to complete this. This would also be for states who are non-nationally registered. And they're able to track the single provider across multiple states. So if you have a provider who's working in multiple states, possibly be able to identify all of those items. Third item here is a defined list committee. This defined list committee is part of the NMSIS defined list. Those committee members have been selected. We are trying to find a time to meet here in early January. The purpose of this committee is to improve the quality of the EMS patient care documentation by updating the documentation code list known as the defined lists on a regular schedule to ensure consistency in reporting and code inclusion for emerging issues. One of the big talks that we've been having with the Data Managers Council is micromobility and the e-scooters or the e-bikes. And we've kind of talked back and forth with all the different partners. And I think we've come down to the 2 codes that we want to add, and that'll be able to assist in documentation of that. And then lastly, lots of NASEMSO regional meetings are taking place right now. It feels like they're all kind of happening at once. We're running all over the place, but I've had a lot of good positive discussions on the transition to the 3.5.0. A lot of states have been using the data, seeing how to connect that EMS data. And I think that's just a really great lift. Working with the NMSIS team here, I have offered some assistance to any state who feels that they have any struggles or concerns or just some general questions about their Trans 3.5. And once again, please feel free to reach out about any questions that you have or any help that you may need. And that's all I have for today.
Perfect. Thank you, Randall. And we do appreciate so much your partnership and work on all those projects. So feel free to reach out to Randall directly if you want to put your email in the chat, Randall, or reach out to us and we can connect you with him if you have questions or interest in any of those projects going on. And next on our agenda today is Eric Chaney, or Jeremy, I think, is on the call as well. If we have any updates from the Office of EMS at NHTSA.
Hey, Lauri, thanks. I have nothing for the group this morning unless somebody has something specific for me. Jeremy, do you have anything?
Yeah, nothing for me, but similarly, just if folks have questions, happy to along with Eric answer any questions folks have.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys for being here. And next on our agenda is open forum. Are there any topics that anyone on the call would like to bring up or discuss or questions to ask? All right, then I announce our upcoming meetings. Our next call will be November 8th and then also 13th following that. So we look forward to meeting with you guys again. And in the meantime, reach out if we can help with anything. Thank you I really appreciate you making the time to be here. Thanks, everyone.